Hello everyone, Spot of Nerd here with a brand new episode that's gonna be a little bit different than you're probably used to if you are a subscriber here, first timer, etc. because I'm gonna take your feedback and I'm gonna use it. And that feedback is getting a little bit more specific on some of the details revolving around these reviews that we do. But then I'll also, of course, give my personal take. So the way we're going to kind of do this episode, we are going to talk about... It's tricky. I want to say that this film was good, but I can't say that it was great. We are going to talk about The Bikeriders, which, if you haven't seen, the cast is what will lure you in. I mean, we're talking Austin Butler, we're talking Tom Hardy, we're talking Norman Reedus. Amazing cast. And when you put them together in a 1960s thriller, drama, gang, violence, culture-changing movie together, you think that it's going to be incredible. And if anything, the trailer alone is what will hook you. But the movie itself, it's very bland. So we're going to talk about it, but first of all, let's go ahead and we'll get through the usual stuff, because right out of the gate, I'm doing this Thursday night, this review, so obviously whenever you're seeing this, television saw its first official murder on live television during the presidential debates.
Making sure that we continue to
We need some elder care in the White House.
Healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the
Biden moment, drink.
COVID, excuse me, with
Listen.
dealing with everything we have to do with.
Listen.
Oh gosh.
Getting worse.
Listen.
We finally beat Medicare.
Holy
Biden, President
I told you he'd make.
He just lost the election.
I told you
he just lost the election. Joe Biden just lost that election.
Well, if he didn't have the media and the whole world on his side.
He just lost it.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into that right now. We'll go into it in the future. But if you didn't get a chance to see it, there was officially an annihilation occurred during that debate tonight. So that was fun. And of course, the usual suspects. If you would be ever so kind, I would love you all so much. If you haven't already, go ahead, hit that subscribe button right down below. Give me the likes in the comments. Super duper appreciate all that good stuff. There's also been some other comments pointed out to me that, you know, I do feel maybe the marketing wasn't the best with this film. At the same time, somebody told me through our previous reviews, specifically Bad Boys Ride or Die, I mentioned that the marketing wasn't the best, but it was all over the place, which optimistically tells me that maybe perhaps for the first time in a long time, yours truly is actually starting to live his life more. So I'll chalk that up to a win. Yay. But yeah. Anyway, The Bikeriders. You're gonna notice handy dandy phone, and I'm gonna I'm gonna tell you guys kind of the gist of the film, so that way I don't get anything wrong, and then I'll give you my take on it. So that way this thing doesn't work as well as it used to, but at least we can get the usual suspects out of the way. So it takes place in the 1960s into the 1970s, and it's actually based off of a real book. What was his name? Danny Lyon. He was actually a photographer, and he wrote this book about... You have to really, it is based off of a true story, and it's the amazing culture shift in American culture during that time. Now, a lot was taking place during the 1960s and 70s. We don't need to go down some of those paths, but this is more revolved around the motorcycle gangs, and then ultimately, which led, sadly, into today's world of a lot of violence, a lot of gang violence. So what it ultimately comes down to is there's a group of guys that wanted to start a club. they were kind of the outsiders. They were the rebels, but they loved motorcycles. They loved riding. They loved anything revolving around engines and cars, but obviously specifically motorcycles at hand. So the book was based off of, and this is where I got to give the movie credit. It's got a very much of a, what was a movie with Leo? Oh my god, I'm spacing. The Wolf on Wall Street. Okay, that's where I'm going. So the Bikeriders is kind of more in relation to The Wolf on Wall Street. It starts off with Benny, who's played by Austin Butler, basically goes into a territory that he's not supposed to be in. He's wearing the wrong colors, gets his ass kicked, but then starts the story of a dialogue kind of behind the scenes of his wife, Kathy Boer, I think, if that's how you say it. So that's how they meet, and it's telling the story of, so Danny, the photographer who made the book, is interviewing Kathy in relation to how this all started, how it all kind of developed, the growth, and yada yada yada. So that's where I have to give this film a lot of credit. You know, it kind of catches you in the beginning. There's a lot of back and forth between those initial interviews between Kathy and Danny, but then it also dips back to the story throughout, where you start to you're introduced to Tom Hardy, which was the leader of the group. Benny was the best friend, and ultimately you start meeting these other cast members, one of my favorites being Norman Reedus from The Walking Dead, if you don't know who he is. So, Benny and Kathy actually get married only 5 weeks after they first meet, and this is where I also adore this cast, because Austin Butler is amazing. I hands down, I think Elvis, where he played Elvis with Tom Hanks.
You're looking for trouble? You came to the right place. You're looking for trouble? Just look right in my face. I was born to sing up and talking back. My daddy was a green-eyed man. My middle name is Misery.
One of the greatest films that has ever been made. I swear to God. The way he portrayed that character, you swear you almost were seeing the real Elvis. It's crazy to believe that that's the same person. And Austin Butler's only blown up since then. So when you first see him in this trailer, if you haven't already, you kind of already hooked of like, okay, now I want to go see this. Obviously, I might not be the biggest motorcycle person. And then you see Tom Hardy, and then you see Norman Reedus, and you're like, fuck, this has got to be an incredible movie, especially being based off of more of a thriller, drama type film, but at the same time, biography in a way, maybe. So the motorcycle group is called the Vandals, and it's just, again, a bunch of dudes, motorcycle guys, outcasts who just want to join a club, and it grows from there. They have they call them chapters, where different other groups of guys meet up together, and they join the Vandals to create this giant community, this culture, just like you and I would, the nerdisms, the fandoms of Star Wars, Star Trek, Trekkies, the whole 9 yards. And they just have this crazy journey, this culture changing in American society journey that sadly does ultimately end up being basically almost dissolved in a way. It was kind of that last piece of, I want to say, motorcycle innocence, you know, because it does lead into Tom Hardy being the leader. He gets challenged a few times, and then huge spoilers. Obviously, we're going to spoil this film, but he does get challenged in the end by kind of an outcast. Some of the quote-unquote newer, younger generation, younger people, their changes, They want to make things their way, but they play dirty. So this younger guy who wanted to join originally wasn't allowed to by Tom Hardy's character. I think he's played, what was his name? Johnny, yeah. So Benny is Austin Butler, Johnny is Tom Hardy.
The deal is you will only ever be allowed to touch, harm, hurt, possibly, very possibly, eat very, very bad people, but never, ever, ever good people. All right?
Fine.
And so yeah, you have this kid who was denied entry at first. He obviously challenges Johnny to the group, and he just shoots him quite fair, basically just assassinates him right there. And maybe assassinate's the wrong word, but you kind of know what I mean. Before that, if you were ever challenged, it was just a challenge to a fight, maybe a challenge to a knife fight. Very 60s, 70s type culture. And I'm going to use that word a lot because it shifted this culture of community. It shifted the culture of people getting together that might have a fandom. You know, this is no different than you and I having a fandom for sci-fi, streaming different TV shows and movies, yada, yada, yada. So in the beginning, like I said, you have that initial buildup of Benny and Kathy getting together. You get introduced to Johnny and the crew, and it turns into that this motorcycle, the Vandal group, starts taking over the town. They are almost a gang-like venture, if you want to say that. And because Benny gets his ass handed to him, they obviously go after the guys who did it. It's almost like different territories, and when you pass down to the bad territory, you get your ass kicked, almost like gang warfare. But it's not at that level, and I know the reason I say gang is because that's really the only... I almost see gang as a negative context, but in this case, it's more of this group of motorcyclists, the Vandals, expanding out to different chapters, blah, 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 as mentioned. But, so the way they kind of build their status, they find the guys who kicked Benny's ass, they light his bar on fire, they light multiple, I guess, because whoever the owner is, they light the bar on fire to basically set their dominance. Even the fire crews and the police are hands off. They see Johnny, they see Benny, and they're like, nah, we're not even gonna mess with that shit. That's hell no. So, and then the movie progresses onward. It progresses onward through, you know, you have these other groups, these other guys that try to almost challenge them, and ultimately, almost like Gotham, it almost reminded me too of Batman, Gotham City, the whole crime, different, you have Two-Face and Penguin, and they have their own factions and things like that. So that's where I give this movie a lot of credit. There's a lot of detail, there's a lot of story building, and a lot of character development that really gets you not grained, I guess that's a weird word, but it really gets you more deeply involved with the story overall. It also teaches you a lot about how this all came to be. The 60s and the 70s in America was a very different time. And, you know, regardless of how you feel traditional marriages, things that happened in the 1960s and 70s, I really do love that time period because there were no cell phones. There was no television that kind of drove your life, you know, albeit Johnny wanted to create this group based off of a television show. That wasn't their driving force. Their driving force was community. It was brotherhood. And I love that piece to it. But just like everything in life, with time, with progression, they show over the years, things change. And with change comes not necessarily the best parts of humanity. So, as you might imagine, things start to loosen. And what I mean by that is more violence, more crime. And the Vandals that we know, these newer groups, these newer people that start coming in, are basically turning into the bad guys. Even though they are technically bad guys because they set fire to bars and beat up other people. These guys get a little bit more into, let's just say, a rapey side of things, which very bad. Rape is extremely bad. I genuinely am in belief that if you are somebody who does that, you deserve the death penalty. Don't even question it whatsoever. So that's how it all it finishes out. The kid challenges Johnny, kills him, and that's pretty much the story. The way it ends, Benny, of course, was asked to take over the Vandals because Johnny just couldn't do it on his own anymore, Tom Hardy. And he said no, because he had that challenge. And you can see it throughout the film of like, he had Kathy and he had love. He found true love. And that's probably one of the biggest pieces I loved about the 1960s and 70s was love was existent in a way that you can't really describe. It was so powerful that people stuck together so much as 5 weeks after getting to know one another. And I love that because Austin Butler portrays this badass, you know, this Mike, I think of Charlie Sheen almost. He portrays this super badass bike guy, who you can't really break through this giant wall of masculinity, which I love masculinity, by the way. Just FYI. But again, ultimately at the end of the film, love will always break through. So it does finish out that Kathy and Benny kind of separate themselves from the Vandals, and he does, especially after Johnny gets killed, and they just live a happily ever after life in Florida, albeit. So this is where I gotta finish up with, was it a good film? Sure. My biggest beef with it, and a lot of people are giving it praise, and it does deserve a lot of praise. There's a lot of story, there's a lot of character development, there's a lot of historical accuracy as well from what I've read through my notes. Where this movie kind of gets into the negative side, it's a very dry film. It's the type of movie that if you watch the trailer, which Spot of Nerd, I will probably put it over this right here, right now. It's very dry and boring to where what you see in the trailer as far as action and as far as maybe some more violent type scenes, that's about it as far as the movie. The rest of it is just interviewing Kathy. It's little moments between Johnny and his crew, and it's little moments between Johnny and maybe some of the other guys. It's dry. And I want to I want to really kind of hone in on that, because if you're expecting a movie to be, as I said, similar to The Wolf on Wall Street, what the difference between The Wolf on Wall Street did and the Bikeriders did is The Wolf on Wall Street kept you engaged. Whether it was through conspiracy theories or the drama and the crime that was happening and yada, 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 what the Bikeriders does is just talk and talk and talk and talk. Very similar to what I've always said with Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones always had episodes of about 58 to 1 hour episodes. You'd get 2 minutes of cool action, awesome shit. You get about a minute of boobies. And then the rest of it is just people talking to each other. This is what that film is. And I was kind of a little bit disappointed because, that first 30 to 45 minutes, it really is hooking you in. It's talking about the future with Kathy and the interviewer, Danny. But once you actually do get more onto the story of the Vandals, it just gets very boring. And I gotta be honest there. I really, really do. So ultimately, yours truly, Spot of Nerd, I gotta give it 1 cup of tea out of 4 from me. And it's just because of that. It really does put a damper on the film. I would encourage you to watch it, but I would encourage you to almost wait. This is not a film you need to see in theaters. As much as I want to support these actors and actresses, you're gonna be kind of bored. And especially with what we've come at, tomorrow, we have A Quiet Place Day 1, which we will review. I think there's other things that you could be spending your time on. The Bear Season 3 is coming out. Sadly, you have The Boys continuing. But ultimately, I'd almost say save your money. With all of that said, folks, we will wrap up this episode. I truly, truly thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts. Have you seen the film yet? I would love to know, and tell me your thoughts as well. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you love Austin Butler? Because I think that man is a genius when it comes to acting and just overall being a badass human being. If anything, go and watch Elvis and go and watch Dunkirk with Tom Hardy, Christopher Nolan, his whole World War II film. Fucking amazing films. Amazing films. So yeah, we'll just leave it there. But until next time, folks, we will see you guys next time. Later, y'all. Yeah, so real quick, going back just ever so slightly to the debate between Trump and Biden tonight, whenever you see this. Yeah, that, all jokes aside, if that is not the definition of you're done in relation to Biden and his presidency, I don't know what is. And to get political very quickly here, anybody that saw that, or even some of the highlights of that debate, even those that hate Trump the most, you have got to see the actions actions of Biden during that debate, and you have to question, is that really what you want for this country for the next, honestly, 4 or 5 years, if you think about it? Dear God, pray for this country. Pray that what happens in November is we change things around for the better, because trust me, I've said this a million times before, there ain't no way that that man can handle another 4 years. There's just absolutely no way.